Shawty bad, slim, thick, she might drug, she might fix, and I'm all up in her mix, she be mixing.
Hi lovies, welcome back to today's video. I have the part 3 of reacting to X's documentary. We've got about half an hour left, so this one will be a bit quicker than all of the rest. But I would like to just make the point, y'all, this is a reaction channel. I'm going to give my live reaction, especially when I'm watching things for the very first time. You know, I'm just kind of thinking things out loud and everything. So of course, always feel free to disagree in the comments. But at the same time, also understand that I may have opinions that don't align with the popular opinion, or I may see things a little bit differently, you know. And that's kind of the beauty of this, because we can all kind of come together in the comments later and kind of like digest things, you know what I mean, and kind of see different perspectives. But yeah, as long as you guys are being kind and respectful in the comments, I don't really mind. I think it's fun to kind of see different points of views and all of that. But obviously, yesterday I left feeling triggered. You know, I was obviously, Geneva's story and situation definitely frustrates me a little bit, how it's handled and also how it's received from a lot of X's fans. I don't like it, you know what I mean? And like, I understand the argument that we don't really know what happened, or, you know, she could have been lying. But I've also been in situations with domestic violence, and I understand that it's just far too often a defense, you know what I mean? And I just don't like the quickness. I don't like the quickness of discrediting her just because, you know, we hold X to this very high pedestal. That's all. That's that on that, but we're gonna get right into it, guys.
I want you to get this trending. Hashtag you tell me your problems and I'll tell you mine. And we will use this hashtag to communicate with other fans and friends and that listen to my music that need help.
He did not want that image to follow him around for the rest of his life. But when it comes to his relationship with Geneva, I do sincerely think that he wanted to fix his relationship with her privately. But between the law, the case, and then the public, that was like an impossible task.
He had what's called a no contest order of protection against Geneva.
Under the assumption love is dead already. Let me be here.
One of the girls that he was living with, she hit me up on Instagram. She told me that Jossie wanted to speak to me. And I was like, what? I ended up speaking to him. I was on FaceTime with him, and he was telling me that he wanted to meet up and apologize to me. And I was really scared because I didn't know if it was a setup. I was like still very afraid of him. So I was scared, but I just had to like overcome it. I felt like I had to face my problems.
Reporting live from Florida with the alleged hurricane.
We'd like hang out here and there. I spent a whole weekend with him during a hurricane, and like nobody even knew. People online would be like, they hate each other. But in reality, like, we were talking. For me, like, I found sympathy and empathy in the situation, and I was able to literally just like forgive him, because I feel like I basically compared it to my mother. Like, my mother has abused me, and you don't see people disowning their mother because of that. Well, you do, but not necessarily in every instance.
I will say, I feel like that has to be one of like the hardest parts of all of this, right? Because like X was such a big presence, you know, online and in the world. At that point, it's hard to really have a personal life because everything you do is so closely monitored, you know what I mean? And like, this isn't justifying X. I'm just trying to see things from a lot of different perspectives, you know? But like, I don't know. I feel like some of what X was doing, not like the physical abuse and things, but you know, like the obsessiveness and shit, that's a lot of, I hate, not the word normal, it's not normal, but it also does happen in the lives of everyday people all of the time, and it's not blown up in the way it was for X. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess I could see from the stance he was a public figure, so anything he does is way more heavily critiqued and criticized than it would be if he were just like an average person, you know? So I think it's good that they were able to deal with whatever it is outside of the public eye and really get to the root of the situation. And if I know I stressed about this last video about, you know, like I hope he apologized. And we got there. He apologized to her in private at least, which I think is the most important, right? Because it's their relationship, it's between the two of them. So if they're able to hash it out, you know, I can respect that. Yesterday I was pretty heated, but...
They both had an opinion on what should happen, but at some point the state of Florida wanted otherwise.
When Geneva sent in her affidavit to say she no longer wanted to pursue criminal charges, I think that prompted them to go through the jail calls. You know, there was so much stuff on there. They easily charged Jase with a bunch of new counts of witness tampering.
Okay, guys, so I was just given 7 more charges by the state attorney's office, and I have a court date on the 15th. So I would ask that everyone come to support me. I ask that the people that do come bearing positive energy.
He had this court date in December. The day before, I was asking him, like, what's the worst thing that could happen tomorrow? He answered that he'd be taken in for a couple hours and they'd be able to get him out that same day.
The fans took over the whole courthouse. They were calling the judge, like doing all kinds of crazy stuff. As soon as we walked in the room, you could feel the energy from the judge. He didn't even get a chance to say a word. She just started going in.
Sir, could you stop lying to all your friends? We know your friends are in here to watch you, to make a fuss, to make you take little videos for YouTube. You need to get out of here.
It seemed like she just knew in her mind she was gonna take him that day to make an example of, you don't have more power than we do.
They ended up taking him in for a week.
All those charges added up. So I believe he was looking at 20 years. Now, because of his status, it requires him to be segregated in solitary, not being in general.
Okay, I will say though, like, I feel like that was a bad move to have, like, his fans come to the courthouse. Like, I just feel like that automatically just kind of makes it look like he wasn't taking it seriously, even though that wasn't the case. Because, like, if you've ever been to court or had to, like, deal with any court hearings or anything like that, like, it's not a place to be fucking around and just, you know what I mean? Like, judges do not play around with that. Even in, like, I love true crime. I don't love true crime. I love watching the stories, you know. I find them interesting, and I think it's important to hear the victim stories. But even in, like, instances where, like, a family member was murdered, right, and their family's in court, like, the judge will kick their family members out for, you know, having outburst towards the killer or just wanting to, like, express themselves, you know what I mean? So, like, ugh, that's fucked up, but, like, I could see how most judges would probably look at that situation and be like, you know what I mean?
He doesn't have access to sitting and talking to people or anything that can stimulate him. And he already struggled with hearing voices in his head and being alone. Anytime locked up in solitary would be a problem for him, and we knew that.
It doesn't matter how many times he spoke about, like, helping each other or something like that, it was always, okay, but he beat Geneva. Like, he can never have a conversation without that going back to being the topic.
And why is that wrong?
Why is it wrong?
How do you fully redeem yourself if every time on every corner it just keeps popping up?
But how do you fully redeem yourself without ever admitting that you did something wrong?
He acknowledged that there was a situation, you know, but self-acknowledgement and accountability, do I have to hold myself accountable and admit it to the world just for you guys to judge me anyways?
I mean, I feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think whether or not he would have admitted to what he did publicly, I feel like the response would have been the same. You know what I mean? Like, people who really felt like he was just a shit person in entirety, you know what I mean, based off of what happened with Geneva, they still would have felt that way if he apologized. So I get where she's coming from, but I do feel like it would have been better for him to address it publicly, even if that didn't change the minds of anyone, just so that it would be out there and it's not a conversation he would have to entertain anymore. You know what I mean? But I get it. It's hard, and like I said, they dealt with it privately, and Geneva seemed to have found her peace, and I think that's the most important part, right? They were able to come to terms with it, deal with it, work it out with whatever they needed to, and like that's the other thing, you know, if he wasn't a public figure, it wouldn't be expected for him to deal with it publicly. So I do think that's something that you have to keep in mind, because, you know, as people, when we go through relationship issues, imagine if every argument you got into was so heavily criticized and critiqued, and, you know, like, that's a lot. So I can understand why he didn't publicly address it.
They were going to judge him no matter what, you know, without knowing the full story. It didn't matter if he spoke that full story. They were going to judge him no matter what. And that's all he had to, that's all he was going through, was being judged. He could release a #1 album, you could love his song, but then they were still judging him based on that situation. It wasn't something he was able to escape, even though he was holding himself accountable.
But he wasn't telling the truth about it publicly.
I think it also might have resulted in them taking his whole life away.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that that's an apology that needs to be kind of more planned out in a way that like has an actual beneficial result, and not one that, you know, results in somebody getting their entire freedom and life taken away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I do think he would have gotten to a place where he would have gotten there. He just never had a chance to.
Dr. Michael Brannon. The judge decided that I was going to work with him. The judge pointed at me and says, everywhere you go, he's got to go. You got to go. He can't go anywhere without you. Well, the first day, it was people in here galore. I didn't want to go right then and there in a sit-down face-to-face because from a cultural kind of background, the connotations of therapy and counseling perception is what goes along with that. I'm crazy, I'm loco, and I ain't crazy. As a matter of fact, he mentioned that, you know, ain't nothing wrong with me, I ain't crazy. I said, man, let's walk, let's just walk. Man, I got problems like anybody else. I said, look, I'm here, man, you know, to treat you like a human being. It's about your life, man. It's a bigger picture to me. I'm concerned about you. And he looked like that. Pointed at me, he's like, straight.
I do not at all want any.
Guy was rule-based. He was like, yo, you gotta clean this shit up. Way too many people in and out of your house, bro. You can't control what these people are gonna do. Something bad is gonna happen. Yo, you know what? You can't have all these women in your house. It's gonna lead to something. You just pick one and call it a day. You know, he picked Jen.
Before me and Ja ever dated, we're not two people that were looking for anything at all. He actually wanted me to be his assistant. Ja always saw me as this very nurturing, caring person, and he felt very safe when he was with me, and I did too. So he just kind of said, like, you're my girlfriend now, and if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be, but if you want to, I would love for you to be. I'm like, okay. I could be your rock, you could be mine. I will say there were some days I felt like I was definitely walking on shards of glass because you didn't know what you were gonna get.
We would have sessions. We would just sit down and talk and laugh.
She kind of looks like Geneva.
His pain or whatever he was going through, whatever he wanted to talk to me about, personal, family kind of stuff. And I recognized then that this was a traumatized human being, unable to grieve. And he had to play out the macho. He's 5'2". He's gonna play out this macho, the rap, the hip hop, and all that. He ain't chance, and he's dealing with an enormous amount of emotion and a lot of stuff. I never could be his biological father, and that was not my role. But if anything, that I could be there, and that I didn't want money from him. It was about him, just as a human being that deserved the dignity and the respect.
She won't woohoo me, ayy, just like a song. Right on my dick like a blunt, right on my dick like a blunt. Her booty bit like a pimple, pot that pussy like a pimple.
And I know this from what Cleo and Solomon and everyone told me. It's like when I was around making music with him, that's when he was happy. I realized that like the process of making music and being able to put his mind on something was what allowed him to free his mind off of all the other places that it was going.
Bro, once you learn how to use your vocal range, you can do some crazy shit.
He was putting down big records, and it was exciting to watch.
Take this damage, and the way I feel can't manage.
He was on house arrest, and going to the studio and having to be home at a certain time became an issue. And so we decided to knock out the closets and build a studio in home for him. Whenever he gets into the mood, it's right there.
It was the X. I remember like there was a day in early January that he was asking me if I had any beats. And I said, yeah, I have beats from this person and that person and this producer and that producer. And he said, no, you. And so I reached over and kind of logged into my Box account on his computer. And before I could click on anything, because I was so nervous, I was trying to figure out what to play him, he clicked on something called Sad Banjo, which turned out to be the beat for Sad.
Did you mute that sound or are you like...
I like it.
Okay. And in maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, he wrote that whole song.
Someone that's afraid to let go.
Oh, that's nice. That's dope.
You decide.
Who am I? Yeah.
Who am I?
Someone that's afraid to let go.
You decide. That's fire.
Yeah. Like the day we got the mix of Sad back, I remember us kind of looking at each other and being like, this is different. There was always this desire to have something that just would kind of set him apart from everyone else that he was being compared to at the time. And this would have been a song where there's zero rapping on it. And the idea of this song coming out, especially at the same time as a song called Changes, that excited me and it excited him. And then when those two songs came out, I felt like the entire world changed.
Someone that's afraid to let go. You decide if you're ever gonna let me know. Yeah, suicide if you ever try to let go. I'm sad, I know, yeah. I'm sad, I know, yeah. Someone that's afraid to let go. You decide.
And, you know, in the Sad music video, he kills his former self. And he was really deliberate about not attaching who he was in 2018 to the person that he was in the past.
Someone that's afraid to let go. You decide if you're ever gonna let me know. Yeah, suicide if you ever try to let go. I'm sad, I know, yeah. I'm sad, I know, yeah.
Transitioning into the blue hair was Indigo Child coming into himself and realizing his responsibility to this generation. You know, him and I had a conversation about what are you gonna be? What do you want these kids to walk away with? You know what I'm saying? What's your message? And he realized he had an obligation that was bigger than himself. And so he chose to take that path.
Okay, so my current focus is creation and evolution. It's better to be respected through love rather than fear, simply because, like, all right, I was respected through fear, and it's not real love. It's not real love, and it drives people away. It makes people treat you differently. It makes people really, like, it's just not genuine. It's not what you really would want. like, it's better not to be a crazy motherfucker. It's better not, because I've went through that. I've decided there was a point where I wanted to be the villain, and it's not fun, bro. It's not fun. People it doesn't attract anything that you truly want. I've started to look at myself very differently and beat myself up. And you guys are the only thing that gives me hope. You guys are the only things that thing that motivates me to ideally, like, yo, be strong. You have over 8 million kids or adults and teenagers watching you, relying on you for this hope.
Jase was becoming more patient. He was more positive versus being so angry all the time. You can reason with him because he was able to reason with himself.
When a nigga would just usually freak out and trip out, you would see him go into a corner and do breathing exercises, you feel me? Keep his eyes closed, meditate, even if it's for like a little 10 minutes, then come back and address the situation.
See, I have so much respect for that because that is hard. You know, especially looking at like mainly the first part and a little bit into the second part. You saw how quick to anger he was and how impulsive he was, you know, and to be able to not only recognize it, but take an active role in trying to fix it is very respectable, I think, because a lot of people don't do that. You know, a lot of people are just like, oh, well, I'm this way, and so I'm just, you know, just a shitty person. That's just who I am. But he recognized the amount of influence he had and that he wanted to use that in a positive way, and I think that's beautiful. This fit.
One day I get home and I'm like, something doesn't feel right. Literally the next day I took a pregnancy test, and sure enough I find out that I'm pregnant. John had like 30 phones. It was so ridiculous. So I'm like sending the picture to all these phones because I couldn't get a hold of him. Turns out he was at the gym training. Finally, when I got a hold of Jaw, he was super excited. Like, he was like, no way.
Family and success.
See, and that's the other thing, because like I think it's refreshing to see that this relationship was so positive, and obviously I think it definitely is a matter of the person he was with and also the person he was at this point, where him and Geneva were very toxic and almost doomed from the start because of just all of the trauma and hard shit that they had, where she was more of like that nurturer. And, you know, I don't know, I think it's so nice sorry guys, it's so nice to see him excited, whereas like, you know, when Geneva was pregnant, I don't know if she lied about that or if it was just like a false positive, whatever the situation, he seemed more like stressed, like, oh gosh, like what am I supposed to do? Where this one, he was excited, and like I think it just shows that this is the right person for you and this is the right timeline for him in his life, you know.
Cheers. I almost felt like he knew how to relate to kids more than he did other people. He saw this emotional phenomenon in children, that they were pure and unable to judge and unable to have hatred in their heart. And he loved that so much that the idea of having a kid of his own and being able to instill this sense of acceptance and lovingness and positivity within this kid would have been his proudest moment.
And at one incident, I took him to Nobu. It was his first time eating at a fancy restaurant. And they pulled up, and we were sitting down eating, and he was fucking around with the chopsticks. And we were just sitting there, and we started talking about kids. And he was like, "You're gonna be a great dad." I said, "You're gonna be a great dad too someday, bro." He said, "No, I'm not." So, "What do you mean?" And he just looked me dead in the eye, and he was like, "I'm not gonna make it past 21. And then just went right back to fucking with the chopsticks. Like he hadn't said a thing.
See, this is what is so, oh my gosh, I swear I say it in every video with X and Juice, like the way they were in tune with their life. And it's not even like on some like, oh, they spoke it into existence. No, like they knew. And I feel like that's what made them so important and influential, because everything they put into their music, I feel like, was like times 10 versus what the average artist was doing, because they knew, some part of their subconscious understood that they were not going to have a long life, and so they put all of themselves into their music and into their fans. And I think that is what separates them from so many people, you know. And like, it's so sad, because didn't you say as well that he wasn't making it past 21? Like, oh my gosh.
He always spoke about death and was fascinated with it, I think, since he was about 15. It's almost as if he was preparing me that he wasn't going to be here. His lawyers called and told me that they were coming to pick Ja up Tuesday. I had the worst anxiety ever. I went to the studio and he was working on his first beat. And he was so proud. And I was so proud because I was like, yo, where did you come from? How did you even learn to do these things, you know? He spoke about possibly running. And I was like, Ja, where are you gonna go? You have blue hair with tats all over your face. You're not exactly gonna blend in with the crowd. And he was like, I don't understand what's happening or why. And I said, kid, you're powerful. I said, I've watched you control your crowd and your audience. I said, that's dangerous to the status quo. He got up from around the table and he said, to whom much is given, much is required. And then he said, you know, I'm gonna go buy a bike. And I was like, what? Why? Because at the time he had about 3 bikes in the garage and then some other ones at his other house that he doesn't even ride them. But I knew my son. I knew it was because he was so worried. He was so scared. Typically, I'd be like arguing with him about those type of things if it doesn't make sense. But I knew what that was. And so I was like, okay, let me get security together for you. And he was like, nah, they're gonna take too long. I called Jazz's brother, which is Aiden's dad. I called him and I was like, hey, Ja wants to go pick up this bike. I'm gonna need you to drive his car back in the event that he does get the bike. And I said, no matter what he says, don't leave his side.
I remember I walked home that day, content with all my misery. Told myself to get better, no clue what there was next to me. Remember there was people walking, talking in the distance. I was dressed for winter weather, but the summer rays were kissing me. I was lost. So I took a different path. In the distance, he awaited me. Had no weapon, I'm guessing his hands were just enough for me. Was no question, I'm guessing he laughed just at the sight of me. And there he was. His presence was alarming. As he approached was casual, we talked about self-harming. He told me, kid, you shouldn't be walking on your own. He smiled and laughed and pat my back. He asked, how far are you from home? I said, maybe 30 minutes. His frequency distorted quick, I seen it in his image. I should've run right fucking there. You ever woke up on the train track with no motherfucking clothes on? Dead before your eyes, you praying to God, but ain't no response. Trying to scream for hope, just a shoulder that you can lean on. But ain't nobody coming, so you scream on and scream on and scream on. While the evil fuck laugh at you. Train getting closer, you still surprised that he battered you. Tears falling harder and harder, minutes get minuscule. Could've had a son or a daughter, now what you finna do?
When I got the call, yeah, I just collapsed to the floor.
Bro, I think X got shot, bro. I think X got shot, bro. I think X got shot, bro. I think X got shot.
I'm like, they did what? Like, what do you mean they shot? That's it.
I remember not having any gas, not wanting to stop. trying to get to where he was, and it's all a blur.
And I just remember like calling Cleo, like, Cleo, where are you? She's like, I'm lost. She like literally didn't know where she was. I'm like, bro, you gotta get somewhere. We're at the hospital. She's like, I'm trying to get there. She's like, I don't know where I'm at.
I was like disoriented. I got there was a few people there already. I'm not sure how they found out. And I was just in there for mad long, pacing back and forth. I wasn't able to go back there. They gave me some bullshit story about them not wanting me to see him like that because it would traumatize me, but I think that I should have made that decision of seeing my son.
And then it's like that calm, it was like a calm that set in because it's like, all right, it's Jassé deserted, like he's a fighter. He's a fighter. Jassé's gonna make it through. If nobody's gonna make it through, it's gonna be him.
The cops came out and they pulled me in a room, and I remember the officer was just so callous when he delivered. He was just like, oh, Jassé expired today at such and such time.
I still don't understand what he means by expired.
That shit just seemed like watching a movie or something. I don't know. I'll never come to terms with it.
It went from that to just planning a funeral. I remember Cleo walking in the room and saying, how do we plan a funeral? How do I plan a funeral for my son?
Soul to keep. Hope's not too late for me. Before I lay me down to sleep, pray the Lord my soul to keep. Hope's not too late for me. Difference changing in the distance. Time consumes the image. Before I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Hope's not too late for me.
Oh no, that's not a toy. That's not a toy.
His son isn't old enough to carry on his legacy. There's nobody that can do it. So I have to not only be here for my...
He looks so much like X. Oh my gosh, he's got his eyes.
other son. I have to be here to maintain his legacy as well as look out for my grandson. Ja was my practice baby. I was 17 years old. There's nobody teaching me how to take care of a child. I just had to kind of figure it out. Ja kind of changed my mindset from hammering, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, because you will lose your child doing that. You have to allow them to be themselves.
After Jassé died, Cleo reached out to me like a year later. So she calls me, and before I answer the phone, I'm like, oh my God, like I don't know if this is gonna be bad or good. I was like alleviated but really nervous.
You know, this is, my son's no longer here, and I feel like it's up to me now to make amends for and mistakes that he's done and try to right his wrongs as much as I can. I would actually like to hear you tell your story because, like I said, my son died and he's never admitted it to me. I don't think he would want me to see him in that light or know those things, that side of him. You know, just say was wrong for what he did. You know, there's no excuse for that, period. You know, but I just want the world to know that he wasn't that same person anymore, and that whether it's the past is still a part of his story.
Now, Cleo and I are cool. It makes me feel like a weight is lifted, basically, because like I felt like I wasn't accepted by the whole family the whole time.
I'm not gonna hate her, and my son's not here, and I don't think she should be mistreated in any way. This is about his legacy, and she is the love of his life, and she was a part of that legacy.
People have like asked me for advice, and I just feel bad sometimes because like I don't know how I feel about telling other people what to do or like how to feel about that, because I feel like it's just different with every person.
It's crazy to think that really and truly that at the end of the story, that Jase's legacy is gonna really help so many fucking lives. So hard to explain, but this dude turned everything around for the better.
He sent out a parachute with his name on it. I think he wanted to talk about suicide and those types of things to help somebody. Really, he wanted to save somebody.
It could go a lot of ways for me, but I just know that I have to make Jase proud. I have to, because I know I'm gonna see him again in some cosmic plan. Some cosmic plan, I'm gonna see Ja again, and that's what I live my life based off of.
I'm actually very happy I split this up into parts because I feel like each portion was emotionally heavy in different ways. And I feel like separating them, like yesterday, right, I was pretty triggered with the whole Geneva situation. But today I was able to go into it with more of an open mind, and also just with everything that was included in this part, it gave me that closure that I feel like I was missing in yesterday's video. That, honestly, first thing, I feel for his son, and I think it is so sad that he was so excited about being a dad, but he knew that he wasn't going to be here for his son in that way. But I also feel like, in a way, his son is going to be okay, and I think it's amazing that, you know, his dad was such a powerful, influential person, and he can grow up one day and look back and see the legacy of who his dad was, you know what I mean? And I'm sure X is going to be watching over his son all of the time, you know, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with his life, whether it be music or whatever it is he's passionate about. Secondly, his mom. I know I've given her a little bit of crap throughout this documentary, but I think she truly was one of the biggest contributors to X's success, because she really did stand by his side, you know, the whole entire time, and she never let his vision die, his dreams die. And I feel like, you know, she will spend her entire life making sure that her family is good and making sure that X's legacy lives on. And I think that's a beautiful part about it, because it will, you know, his fan base is so strong to this day. And I get it. I get why people ride for X so hard, because it's just kind of what happens when you are that gift to the world. You know what I mean? It's just like, and it's crazy. It's really crazy to think about all of the great, what am I trying to say? All of the great artists who have died young. I think it's sad. But I also think that it's a testament to how, what is the word I'm looking for? How the ways they were meant to change the world, to the point where even in death, their music still lives on. And I think that is like, you can't ask for anything more than that. And I think it's sad, because obviously X had so much ahead. He had so much life left to live, but at the same time, I think it's great that he lived life in the present. He wasn't afraid of death. You know, I think he understood, and it's something that a lot of us will probably never understand, but he understood his purpose here, and he understood that his timeline was going to be shorter. And so with the time he had, he didn't take anything for granted, and he put his all in everything. Oof, that was an emotional part 3, guys, but that is the end of the Look at Me X documentary, and I think it was beautiful. Let me know your guys' final thoughts down below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe for engagement. And thank you for all of you who recommended this. If you have any other documentaries or different artists, I'm thinking of doing a Tupac Biggie series on this channel. So yeah, just let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video.